Welcome to Lakers Central. Today's episode is sponsored by Stitcher. Make sure you use promo code crossover when you want to try out Stitcher Premium for free. You get Stitcher Premium free for 30 days if you use promo code crossover. All right, enough of the sponsorship. Let's get into it, fellas. The playoffs are here. Everything is set. And I'm joined by three gentlemen that was with me. God, now it seems like a lifetime ago when we last
all got 7 years ago, I think.
Back when the Bucks were actually good, and the Lakers for that matter.
Let me introduce everybody. If you do not know, I'm joined by Cody Hodak, senior writer and YouTube producer for Overtime Heroics. He obviously is going to represent the Bucks. I'm joined by Brian Cullen, host of Clipset podcast and contributor to Clipperholics. He's repping the Clippers. And Alex Fidanza, editor for Raptors Rapture, obviously repping the Raptors. So, fellas, thank you for joining me again. But the playoffs are here. Everything is set. When we got together a few months ago and we talked about these four franchises, we expected them to still be the four best teams in the NBA. And record-wise, nothing has changed. Bucks and Lakers seem not to give a damn right now about much else. But these are still the four best teams in the NBA. So I want to start with Alex. One, because we share a name, and two, because the Raptors are way better than what I thought they were. And you talked a lot about them last time we were all together, man, but they look good. So at this point, should the Bucks be worried about the Raptors, Alex?
I would like to say they should, but I don't think so. They played, I believe, 2 games. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, against each other. I think Bucks won both games fairly easy. It wasn't really a competition. And also seeing Siakam struggle, he was the number one guy the whole season. At the beginning of the season, he was even like MVP like numbers. He was like 5th at the end of November, and he just hasn't been that same guy. So I don't know. I think it'll be really hard for them to actually upset the Bucks if they get to the conference final, just because of that. Like, they don't have Kawhi Leonard to bail them out anymore. And as we've seen last year, they were just struggling. Other than Kawhi Leonard and Ibaka, everyone was struggling. And I don't know if it'll be the same story again this year. I think Van Vliet's a lot better. I think Larry's better, but added responsibility. But is it enough to win against Giannis? I'm not too sure about that.
I mean, Cody, what do you think? Your Bucks are, record-wise, best team in NBA. Giannis did catch a suspension for headbutting. Who did he headbutt again?
Mo Wagner.
Former Laker, Mo Wagner. I don't know what got in Giannis's head, man. But so what's going on with the Bucks, Cody?
I'll be honest, I really don't know. I still am not sure how to take this whole bubble situation. I don't know how seriously I should look at every team's performance and be like, this is exactly what we're going to see in the playoffs. So, I'm trying to take some of it with a grain of salt. I'm still trying to look at prior to the bubble when the Bucks were like the 3rd best defense since 1990. And that's just not what they've been. And I've seen some pieces. There's just one written on the behind the Bucks. Going to get the website correct here. It's like behind the Bucks pass or something like that, where they're talking about the fact that the Bucks are just giving up so many 3-pointers. And that's a big part of their defense is they shut down the paint and they give up a few more 3-pointers because of it, but they've been giving up way too many of them. And you could see it against teams like the Miami Heat where Duncan Robinson was just going crazy against them. So, we'll see if they can shore up that defense again for the playoffs. I'm still pretty confident in them, but they haven't given me much to feel confident in these past 8 games.
And what about the Clippers, Brian? Damn good team. So we didn't see much of we didn't see really a complete roster from them in the bubble. I mean, there was lemon pepper wing gate that took place with the Clippers and Trez hasn't really been there. But the Clippers are still the Clippers. They look really good, man. So what are your thoughts about them heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, I just kind of think that they're going to rest Kawhi for the first couple rounds. I'm kidding, guys. There's no way that happened. I think they look good. There's been a lot of promising stuff. Like you said, they haven't been complete in the bubble, which is perfect for the entire season because I think they've only played 11 or 12 games as a full team. But it's, for me, we know what the superstars are going to bring with the Clippers. We know what Kawhi is capable of. We know what PG is capable of. But it's seeing some of these, especially like the newer additions, kind of come into form. Like Marcus Morris has been great. He started to get that shot back a little bit. His defense has been good since he joined the team, but just seeing his offense start to click and find his role with the Clippers kind of coming together in the bubble is really promising. My biggest thing is getting Patrick Beverley back. I think he's one of the biggest X factors on the team. I think he won't jump off the stat sheet most nights, but his effect on the game is massive. And getting him back into the starting lineup forces Reggie Jackson back on the bench, which I will tell you, all of Clipper Nation is like dying to see, and cannot wait to see the ball out of his hands a little bit, so he's not taking these running floaters into somehow 7 defenders every time he gets on the court. So getting him back into that role of the kind of reserve guard, more off ball than what he's been, I feel good. I mean, the first round, I feel like as good as Dallas is and what they're capable of doing offensively, the Clippers have handled them pretty well this year. I mean, they've swept the regular season series. So I think Clippers in 5 in the first round, I feel pretty confident about them.
Yeah. And then there's my team, man. You know, we got up for the Clippers game. As I expected the Lakers to do. They locked up the 1 seed as I expected them to do in the West. And after that, it's basically, you know, I guess we haven't cared much, right? I mean, that's the way it looked. I think the Lakers, I thought they would be prepared coming into the bubble, but they just didn't look interested outside of the Clippers game, really. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm not really concerned at how they played. I mean, no matter what, the Lakers have 2 top 5 players and arguably the greatest player of all time. And, you know, still at the tail end of his prime, but he can still, you know, still a maybe top guy in NBA right now. They have enough to do whatever they need to do. If they lose, they lose, you know. But as far as I'm concerned, you have 2 top 5 guys. They need to make it at least to the finals. That's the bottom line. And so it's interesting to see, you know, like right now, Rondo has re-entered the bubble coming off his injury. He's rehabbing, and there are some people who, you know, think that Rondo is the answer. I don't. That's ridiculous. Anyone that's watched basketball this year, I mean,
name me some names of who thinks he's going to be the difference maker.
I mean, and that's not to disrespect Rajon Rondo. I think he offers a lot off the court now. I think his mind is still there, but physically he can't compete the way he used to. But the Lakers did bring in guys like Dion Waiters, who, you know, finally got to play with them. I think Dion has done well within his role. J.R. Smith, who hasn't played a whole lot, but you guys are there to give the Lakers a little bit of a punt they need it. So at this point, you know, the list we're going to face Portland, and there are some people that think they're going to upset the Lakers. I do not believe that. But nevertheless, before we dive into, you know, some of these playoff matchups, Brian, let me ask you, man, are you surprised that Adam Silver actually pulled this thing off? Nobody getting sick, no major injuries, at least to the superstar players it is. And that things have been smooth thus far in the bubble, minus your guy going to see some ass.
They were wings, okay? First of all, he was hungry. I recently had to kind of swallow my pride a little bit because I had a lot of hesitation, and I still am not 100% on board with, you know, the league happening. I'm going to live in that conundrum until we're past the era of COVID. And that aside, just everything happening in the social justice movement in the world and removing players from that aside, the league has done an amazing job we were all glued to our screens at like 10:30, or at least here on the West Coast, at like 10:30 a.m., 11:30 today. You know what I mean? Like, they've given us such a good product to keep everybody healthy. Props to Silver, props to the whole league. They've done an amazing job. And I think other leagues need to kind of pay attention. I mean, the MLB should be looking and taking notes right now, especially the Marlins. But yeah, I mean, the NBA, just the way that they were able to pull it all off, it's truly impressive what they've been able to do.
Alex, have you noticed a difference with like the virtual fans? I mean, do you even pay attention to that kind of stuff when you're watching these bubble games?
Not really. I don't feel it's for well, at least for like I feel the people watching, it's not that much of an effect. It's weirdly enough, it still feels like there is fans there. Like I guess the overall ambiance, the atmosphere is still really good. It's not as bad as I thought it would be without fans. I thought without fans it'd be a lot more. I don't know. I guess it'd be a lot worse. But I feel it's more for baseball. It's affected a lot. Like baseball's a lot less watchable now. But for the NBA, it's been pretty good all around. There's still fans in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know. It still feels like there's fans there. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it.
Sorry, real quick on the virtual fan thing. I love what the Denver fans have been doing during free throws. Have you paid attention to that? So the virtual fans, anytime the opposing team is shooting free throws, everyone starts leaning back and forth into the camera. And so it's this like really weird, like back and forth effect. And because I was wondering, I was like, how do you try to distract them like you normally would at a game? And that's the best technique I've seen so far.
Yeah.
I think funny. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, what I was going to say, the thing that it's different for me with the fans, it really doesn't bother me at all. But the one thing that I do miss is when the crowd like gasps at a really big play or at a potential play. Yeah. Like at one point, Ja Morant got up. He missed the dunk. I think he may have been blocked or lost it or something like that. And he gets up like he gets up. And I was like waiting for the crowd to gasp at it. And there was just kind of like an awkward silence for a second. And I'm like, oh, there's no crowd there. So, I like 99% of the time, I'm like, this doesn't matter at all. But for those like few plays, I do miss it.
Yeah, I had somebody ask me like, did it disrupt my viewing experience? And at first, I completely forgot. Like when the bubble first started, I forgot there were even virtual fans there. It just wasn't even on my mind. I was literally glued to the on the court product. And then once someone put it in my mind, then I started paying more attention to it. The NBA has done a phenomenal job, with the virtual fans, with the testing. Every couple of days, Sham and Woj will tweet 360 tests, and they're all negative. I mean, they've handled this beautifully. And it's, in my opinion, there's been no on-court drop-off of the product. The product has remained good. The players seem to be engaged. And you're right, Brian. I mean, you look around at other sports leagues, I don't understand why everybody else didn't call Adam Silver and say, hey, man, like once they got this thing going and it's been successful, why all the other commissioners, including college, even though I'm against the kids playing in college, but even, the NCAA calling out Adam Silver and saying, okay, how did you do this? Right. Like there's no reason for the NBA to have been able to pull this off, and all the other multi-billion-dollar leagues can't get this thing right. And it's really, to me, it's like, I don't know if it's a laziness thing. It's kind of like Adam Silver, look, he's not walking on water, yet he figured this thing out, and now going into the playoffs, they've got some matchups that I think fans are going to want to see. Lakers, Blazers is obviously going to be a big matchup. Clippers and Mavs are a big matchup, but let's talk about some of those matchups, man. Cody, let's start with you. I mean, it almost feels like you guys have the easiest first round matchup with Orlando. But I mean, is this going to be a sweep?
I never like predicting sweeps. I always think that a team has a chance to steal away one game. So I think unless it was like the Warriors going against whoever they were going against, I generally pick 5 games. But I don't know. The Magic seem to be doing all right. Their offense was looking solid throughout this bubble. And I really do believe that the Bucks are going to shore up whatever issues that they've had. Giannis is going to come back fiery after being suspended for that one game, which, definitely showed shades of that Mike Dunleavy tackle from like 2015 or 2016, whatever that was. But yeah, I was actually thinking about this, and I'm saving my answer for later, but I'm assuming I'm going to be asked who I think is going to win this championship right now. And when I was looking at the Bucks, I was just like, I feel like they just have a really easy path to the finals, or at least the Eastern Conference Finals. That first and second round, I can talk about the Heat coming up here, but I don't think that Magic team is going to be any sort of an issue for them.
Alex, what do you think about the Raptors? I mean, you think they're going to sweep the Nets?
I don't think it's going to be a sweep at all. The way Caris LeVert has been playing has been phenomenal, and I think he's going to carry over to the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure the Nets are going to steal 1 or 2 games under their noses. I would say Raptors in 5 or 6 games. I'm trying to think of an issue the Nets would impose, but with no one really there, I see the Raptors going for it pretty easy.
Brian, is there any chance the Mavs upset the Clippers?
No, I'm not buying into the Dave DeFore idea that the Mavs are going to win this series. They're an amazing team. So I've talked about this on my show a couple times, is that they have such a good young core that I feel like the excitement that everybody has about them right now might be just a little premature, where we all see the future that the Mavericks have and this amazing thing that they're starting to build, but it's not quite there yet. And I think that's where the excitement comes from, is that we're looking a couple of years ahead and we're projecting that into the now somewhat. Now, they are an amazing offensive team. Luka is a superstar, no doubt. KP is starting to put his game back together. Maxi Kleber's been great. They have a lot of pieces. I just don't think it's quite there yet. And the Clippers have had their number all season. I mean, if maybe they take a game off the Clippers, I think it might be a 5-game series, but I think it'll be a competitive 4 or 5-game series, but I don't see it going past that.
And now we get to the Lakers, and I'm going to ask you guys before I decide to chime in, but Cody, are you buying that the Blazers are going to upset the Lakers?
Not at all. No. I mean, the brilliance of Lillard might buy them a game or so. Nurkic, especially today, he had like a 20-20 and 6 game today. That was incredible. He really anchored that win for them, even though Lillard did have a couple stretches of brilliance, and CJ McCollum definitely brought their team home in that last couple minutes there. But I don't know. The defense has been atrocious. And once they step up against someone like LeBron, I don't see how they're going to stop LeBron. Nurkic isn't going to be able to keep up with Davis either. I think that 1-2 punch is just going to be way too much for them. And then I don't know. I believe in playoff LeBron. And once he activates whatever it is that's inside of him, Blazers just don't have a chance. I actually think this is a better chance of being a sweep than Bucks Magic has a better chance.
Interesting. Should I be concerned at all with Blazers and how hot Dame Lillard has been?
I don't know. Initially, I did think Blazers would cause problems. Also, it's a weird matchup because I believe the Lakers have the best defense and one of the worst offenses. And then Portland's the complete opposite. They have one of the best offenses. I can't say that word. And one of the worst defenses. And I don't know. It's kind of like going to be a weird game. I do think the Lakers don't have an answer for Lillard and McCollum, unless they might put Davis on Lillard, which I'm not too sure of, because then there's no one on Nurkic. But I would like the Blazers to obviously make the game as hard as possible for the Lakers. But then, like as Cody mentioned, playoff LeBron is something real, something we've seen far too many times, and I'm just going to take it up another notch. And it's just going to be too hard to take down.
Brian, there were some rumors that some of the Clippers players wanted the Blazers to get in and play the Lakers. So what are your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that they were kind of pushing for that first round matchup. I don't think they were pushing for it thinking that the Blazers were going to knock the Lakers out. I just think they wanted them to tire them out a little bit, just because, okay, what Phoenix did was amazing in the bubble, but I just don't think they're there yet. I don't think that they're playoff tested as much as the Blazers are. And I think that this Blazers team, if this had been the team all season, they'd be a top 4 seed. So it's a tough 8th seed to face. I do think the Lakers take it. There's some matchups that I think are interesting. Alex brought it up. I think the backcourt matchup is going to be interesting, how they try to guard that. But I mean, CJ McCollum having a hurt back, who knows how much he's going to be able to actually carry. And I mean, Nurkic, he had a great game today, but he also kind of struggled a little bit against Brooklyn. And AD is 100 times the player that Jared Allen is right now. So I think that he kind of eliminates Nurkic a little bit in that, especially defensively. And yeah, I mean, I do like the top offense versus top defense kind of matchup there, but I don't see the Blazers taking more than 2 games off the Lakers, if that.
I mean, Dame has been amazing. Dame was amazing before this playoff run. He's a bad boy, future Laker, hopefully. And so, look, man, he's good enough to get them a game or 2. I mean, he might be good enough to push it 7 if he gets super hot. but I don't think that it's not going to come to that. I think this is over in 5 games. And when I look at the Blazers, the Lakers don't need to stop Dame. Dame can drop 40 or 50, do whatever he's going to do. As long as LeBron and Anthony Davis do what they do, this series will go the way of the Lakers. I also wonder if the Blazers will run out of gas at some point. I mean, Dame and CJ played 40-plus minutes today. They struggled to beat Brooklyn the other night. I mean, they've had to be amazing. And at some point, all these games back to back to back, you hit your wall. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen. But I want to get you guys' thoughts on some of these other matchups. I mean, Brian, what do you think about the Denver Jazz matchup? I mean, that should be a Denver series, right?
See, I don't know that I think that's a very interesting matchup, to be super honest. I think that those teams play each other pretty well. I also think, and Zach Lowe brought this up, the Jazz kind of threw the bubble games. They didn't try too hard. They tinkered with lineups a lot. And I think part of that, like, Lowe was saying, was they did it to avoid the Rockets. I think that was the one team that they didn't want to see. And so they kind of like meddled through those 8 games to keep Denver in that first round matchup. It'll be fun to watch the bigs go against each other, because you have, the greatest passing big of all time. He's very offensively gifted versus a 2-time defensive player of the year big. I don't know. I don't think that that's an easy match for either team. And I think that one could go 7. I think that might end up being one of the most entertaining first round matchups.
So from the Clippers perspective, do you think that the Clippers would rather see the Jazz or see the Nuggets in the second round?
That's a good question. I would probably lean towards wanting to see the Jazz more than the Nuggets, because the Jazz, they like to hunt out, and again, Lowe had brought this up, they hunt out corner threes, and the Clippers' wing defense is amazing. So I don't think that they look at that as that much of a threat. And Denver's a tough team, man. Like they are really good. And they've discovered a new talent in Michael Porter Jr. Who knows what he looks like in a playoff setting, but who knows what anybody looks like in this playoff setting, because we've never seen it in a bubble before. And the other thing that I'm really interested with Denver too is, if ever there was a team that truly lost home court advantage, it would be the Mile High team. Right. Because that's one of the worst arenas for people to go play in because of the altitude. So it'll be interesting to see them in a playoff series without that added advantage to it. But yeah, I think the Clippers definitely would want to see Utah over Denver.
Alex, what do you think about the Celtics and 76ers? That should be a Boston win, right?
See, here I actually like the Sixers a lot, just in general as a team. So I cover them a lot. I do think Boston should get the win, but Joel Embiid, I feel there's something that could come out here, especially after like 2 consecutive early losses in the playoffs. And I don't think it's something he's not going to go by easy. And I don't think the Celtics have an answer to that. Obviously, the Sixers don't have an answer to any of their perimeter scoring. With Ben Simmons out, it's going to be devastating to see what Tatum's going to do. They just don't really have anyone for Jason Tatum. Matisse Thybulle isn't really there yet. He just gets a lot of fouls as an on-ball defender. Tobias Harris is too slow. There's just no one really to guard Tatum, and I really wonder what they're going to do with that. And also, this is a do or die for Brett Brown. So if he loses this, there's no way I think either way he's gone, but especially if he loses a series, he has to find to maximize Embiid. And honestly, I think Simmons going down is going to help him offensively. Not in transition, obviously, but in a half-court set, it makes it a lot more easier for them to score, because who's going to guard? Like, they have a functional offense. And as for the Celtics, they just have so much perimeter scoring that they should technically go through very easily through this. Also, Kemba Walker, if he plays the way he's plays when he's at his top, who's going to stop him? They have no answer. Shake Milton he's okay defensively, but he's not who he where he should be at. And I want to say the Sixers, but I think the Celtics just take it. I don't believe in Brett Brown, and I don't believe in Embiid being healthy or going 100% every game without going down.
If the Celtics come out of that series, are the Raptors? Can the Raptors beat them?
No, actually, for the Raptors, they'd rather see the Sixers 100%. The Celtics, they've actually struggled. They for the season series, they're 3-1. No, the Celtics are 3-1 against the Raptors.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because the Raptors, what they strive on is that all of their players can dribble, all of their players can score, all of their players can play defense. The Celtics, more or less, are kind of like that same team. All of their players can do that too, and I feel they could do it better. I feel Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is a notch over their wings of Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. The center would be the edge on the Raptors, obviously, and then there's the backcourt of the Raptors: Van Vliet and Kyle Lowry. And I'm not. I don't know. I think it'll be really tough, and especially the way I think it's Jaylen Brown who's been guarding Siakam or Tatum. The way they shut down Siakam is always shown to struggle against good defenders, and it's probably one of his biggest problems. And with the perimeter defending they impose the Celtics, it's going to be hard for Siakam to find his stride. It's going to be hard for the Raptors to find their stride. So I think the Celtics would be really. I think they'd advance if they match up against the Raptors.
So let me ask you this, Cody, before I get to the Pacers Heat matchup. I wanted to ask you about the Rockets and the Thunder. I mean, Westbrook is injured, I believe. Any way the Thunder upset the Rockets in this series?
I'll be honest, even with Westbrook in the lineup, I might be going against the grain here, but I like the Thunder against the Rockets in this series. I'm a huge Chris Paul believer. I know a lot of people talk about him struggling a lot in the playoffs, but honestly, I feel like he's performed super well throughout his entire career here. And when you look at some of the lineup data, when you have that trifecta of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Chris Paul, and Danilo Gallinari, and then you switch in guys like Nerlens Noel, Steven Adams, Lou Dort, or Dennis Schroeder, all of those lineups are just spectacular. They're like plus 26, plus 33 per 100 possessions, which is essentially unheard of right now. And so they have a lot of really good synergy right now. They have when Chris Paul is really in charge of that offense, he knows how to handle it efficiently without turning the ball over. He sets up his guys. Gilgeous-Alexander really has a shifty handle. I mean, he's not much like Ja Morant, but he's really good at kind of shifting his way into the paint and setting up teammates or scoring that way. Gallinari is like an all-time efficient shooter. I mean, he's had health issues throughout his career, but this year he's been really spectacular. My only concern with the Thunder is that Steven Adams doesn't seem like he's a 100% right now. I don't know how important that's going to be against a team like the Rockets, but that does give me a little bit of pause. But I don't know. I actually doubt James Harden a lot more than I doubt someone like Chris Paul in the playoffs. So I really need to see that first before I'm going to be like, that's a bona fide superstar that's going to carry his team no matter what in the playoffs. So, if you told me to pick right now, I think the Thunder are going to win this series.
Ooh, okay.
Now, you heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Well, what about the Pacers Heat? I mean, can Jimmy Butler, can he pull the Heat to the second round?
I think so. I think the Heat are actually going to win that matchup as well. I really like this Heat team. I think I've said it multiple times in tweets throughout the year, but the Heat are my favorite team in the league to watch, actually. They have so much action going on. And during one of the games recently, I think Reggie Miller has actually been calling the game, but they were talking about how Eric Spoelstra has his team watch old film of Reggie Miller making all of his cuts and moving off ball to emphasize how important that is. And you can really see that, especially with guys like Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler essentially has to be that proficient at moving off ball because he doesn't have a jump shot all of a sudden. But man, when he cuts with a purpose. He draws a lot of contact. He sets up guys. Bam Adebayo, he doesn't stretch out really well to the three-point line, but when he sets up and positions himself out there like a Nurkic, like a Marc Gasol, he's really good at finding cutters. And of course, he's a fantastic defender on the other hand. And Duncan Robinson, I mean, this guy is just shooting the lights out. I mean, some of his hard cuts on the perimeter are just, I don't know how you keep up with that. I mean, I know TJ Warren has been fantastic for the Pacers, but I think the Heat are going to win this series.
Heat's been a really good team, man. I mean, they were much better this year than what I thought they would be. And so I assume that we all believe, the four teams that we write about and talk about will be the Final Four of the NBA. But let's look at some of these matchups. I mean, Cody and Alex, and I'll start with you, Cody. If the Bucks meet the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, how many games does it go, and who do you think comes out of that matchup?
I really respect the Raptors. I really like them, but obviously not having Kawhi Leonard is a huge hit to them. Not having Danny Green is a huge hit to them. That was really necessary to have for beating them in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I think the Bucks could take care of them. I could see it going 6 or even 5. Like, no disrespect to the Raptors, but I think when the going gets tough in the middle of the playoffs, I think the Bucks are really going to put it together. And I don't know if the Raptors are going to have a handle. Like Alex was saying earlier, Pascal Siakam has been struggling a little bit, and he kind of has the same sort of issues as Giannis, where when you really throw really strong, good defense at him, he doesn't have a ton of counters to come at you. But Giannis is just, significantly better than Siakam in that category. So, when it starts grinding down, I don't know who the Raptors are going to turn to and be like, look, we need to get some ugly looking buckets right now. What are we going to do against this Bucks team? So yeah, I'm pretty confident that if they meet up in the Eastern Conference Finals, that the Bucks are going to win it in 5 or 6 and go to the finals.
Alex, what do you think, man? How many games do you think that series will go against the Bucks? And can the Raptors shock the world, man, and get to the finals again?
So yeah, like Cody said, I do think the Bucks would win in 6, but in order for the Raptors to actually shock them, I think Van Vliet and Lowry have to play out of their minds. I think Eric Bledsoe has to choke again, like he always does. And and it's funny also that I think Cody mentioned the Bucks give the most open threes. I think the Raptors are right up there also. So we're going to see a lot of threes. I don't know if it's going to be high-scoring games, but we're just going to see a lot of threes taken because both these teams let the other team take threes. They're not afraid to do that. And I'm not – so maybe that – I don't know if – it's really tough. I'm trying to think of a way the Raptors might shock them here. I don't really have faith in Siakam. You could just put Giannis on him. You could put – I'm not sure they usually put on them, but I'm trying to think
I feel
of
like Giannis would probably be the main person that guards him. Yeah, I mean, Chris Middleton might also shift over to it too. But yeah, I think it would be Giannis mostly.
Yeah, so if Giannis is guarding Siakam, forget it. Siakam will go 2 and 18 from the field. So he's not reliability. It would really have to be on the backcourt and maybe open up more through Gasol. But then even then, you can't really play through Gasol because Brook Lopez has been playing like Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I know he's not, but he's been playing like that. He's been a great defender. And I don't know what Marc Gasol can do against that also. It would really have to be Lowry and Van Vliet shock the world. Van Vliet has to have another son born or play like his son born from last year. Yeah, I really think that's the condition. The backcourt has to play like out of their minds for them to win.
Yeah, I have to say I'm nervous about Van Vliet because I think it was the first 2 games he was looking pretty rough. Or was he even there? I might be wrong about that.
I think he was barely playing minutes. Even like the first 2 rounds against the Sixers, he was awful. He couldn't even stay on the field. And then against the Bucks, the first 2 games, he was awful. His son was born. He was a completely new man. His shot like Steph Curry, step backs like Steph Curry. I don't know.
He shot.
And he wasn't missing.
He shot like Steph Curry wishes he could shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
Brian, go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if Van Vliet continues to play the way he's been playing in the bubble, then I think there is some concern there for the Bucks. But that's about it.
I mean, Brian, and obviously all eyes will be on a Lakers-Clippers Western Conference Finals if it comes down to that. You think it goes 7 games?
Yeah. I go back and forth on this series all the time. A couple episodes ago on Clipset, we talked about it, and I picked the Lakers in 7. And I have gone back and forth several times since then. There's a few things that I really need to see before I'm a little more confident in picking who takes that series. I think a big factor is going to be the way these games are being called. They've been calling everything really tight in the bubble.
Yep.
Like they're calling everything in the bubble right now, and historically the whistle disappears a little bit in the playoffs. So I want to see if that holds true, if that's going to be the case, if they're going to let these 2 teams play a little bit, because that like comeback that first night in the bubble when it was the Battle of LA round 4, it was hard for both teams to watch, like both sides to watch, because the refs just called everything and nobody could find a rhythm in that game. AD eats the Clippers, right? Like AD really gets them, especially through those first 3 quarters. AD just eats. and he gets a lot of it at the line, which is why I need to see what they're going to be calling those games like. And then on the other side, as much as the Clippers haven't really had an answer for AD, Kawhi eats against the Lakers too. And, what does it look like when he gets some more minutes, when Doc actually staggers the two stars a little bit? You know what I mean? Like there's so many factors there. And then what the role players look like. Both teams have role players that could get hot. You know what I mean? Like it could be Danny Green gets super hot from 3. You could get one of those massive Dion Waiters games. You can get a massive J.R. Smith game. You can get a massive game, like Landry Shamit's the kind of guy that could go off from deep. There's, what is Patrick Beverley going to look like? What does health look like? Health is going to be a big one, right? Like Patrick Beverley hasn't played most of the games in the bubble with a calf strain. So there's just so many factors that it's such a hard series for me to call. It could go either way, honestly. I'm 50-50 on that series still.
And that series, as far as I'm concerned, man, I think all 4 superstars have to step up, and be what we know they can be. But then either one of those teams are going to need their second units, some of those bench guys to play well. It could be a different guy any given game, but I think both teams need somebody else to step up. And right. The Lakers certainly, for me, I need to see more of that LeBron, Anthony Davis pick and roll because I think it's unstoppable. Vogel hasn't shown much of that at all this year, right. But I think going into the playoffs, AD and LeBron got to both play 40-plus minutes. There's someone in the comments right now saying that Rondo will be very important in that series. No, he will not. I don't want Rondo in that Clipper series. There's no way. Lou Williams will kill him. I can't. So, but aside from that, the Lakers also have to shoot better from 3, and everybody knows that they've been terrible from 3, and they don't need to be 73-9 Golden State Warrior good, but they need to shoot middle of the road from 3 against the Clippers. If they can shoot, I think right now they're one of the 5 worst teams in NBA at 36% from 3. If they can just get that up to like 30, 38%, that's middle of the road, and I think that's enough. But again, guys like Danny Green, he's streaky. His whole career he's been streaky, but if he gets hot, he's blazing. Dion the same way, JR the same way, but the Lakers will need some consistency out of like a guy like Kyle Kuzma, who in the bubble has actually played really, really well on both ends of the ball. Again, he's never been in the playoffs. So just like you said earlier, with Denver and some of their young guys, who knows what Kuzma's going to look like in the playoffs. But I think that, if the Lakers and Clippers meet in the Western Conference Finals, I think it goes 7 games. And at that point, I cannot bet against LeBron, even though Kawhi is on the other end of the ball, other side of the ball. But boy, will it be high pressure for both of those teams to win. And look, the NBA wants that, right? Like the NBA wants the Lakers and Clippers to meet in the Western Conference Finals. The amount of money that they're going to make if those two teams play is phenomenal. But going on from there, who do you guys expect to win a championship this year? Or who has the best shot looking right now into the playoffs? And Brian, I'll start with you. Who do you think is the hottest team right now, or has the best shot at winning the championship?
Are we talking like full health?
Full health.
I mean, that's a tough one. I think I have to pick the Clippers right now, just because of the fact that they've been there. I think they're the only team in the bubble right now, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. Since the All-Star break, they have like a net rating of like 10.5. It might have dropped to 10. I mean, but who knows? Like another thing about the Western Conference Finals, Marcus Morris might not be in that series. He's got a kid due in September, and he told us that he is most likely leaving the bubble for that. And that could play into the Clippers' hands, actually, because Marcus Morris has been terrible offensively against the Lakers. But there's a lot of factors there, but I don't know. I picked the Clippers just because that net rating has been amazing. I think they're starting to put it together. They're figuring it out, but health is going to be a major, major factor in that.
Alex, who do you think has the best shot at the championship right now?
If the Phoenix Suns would have made it, I would have said the Suns. Well, I made a bracket this morning, and took me like 20 minutes to make. It was just, and I think it's the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know. It's something about Giannis, something the way they play. My biggest like fear with Milwaukee Bucks, Cody's happy, is obviously Budenholzer. He's known for not adjusting in game, and that's really what I'm scared of, what I'm afraid of, especially when you face coaches like Brad Stevens or Nick Nurse, who are just like super famous for that. They know like what to do in game or what, like even the next game. Budenholzer kind of refuses to adjust. He's like, we're doing this until it works, live or die by the three. And that's what I'm afraid of, but I would have to say the Milwaukee Bucks.
And Cody, I assume you're going to say the Bucks have the best shot right now at the championship.
I don't know if I'm going to say that, actually. This is one of those things. I'm really struggling with this. I swear that my answer is changing every day. I'm watching this, the real sign guy leaving comments just saying that everyone probably not saying the Lakers is wrong. So I appreciate you, the real sign guy one. You're really, really doing hard work out there. The thing about the Bucks, I do think they have the easiest path to the finals, right? I think of all of these four teams, they have the best shot at actually being in the finals. But like Alex just laid out, I too am also very nervous about Budenholzer being stubborn and not changing. I too am very nervous about Eric Bledsoe just not performing in the playoffs again. Chris Middleton has shown off that he's fantastic in the playoffs. But I don't know. Honestly, if I had to pick right now, I think that the Clippers actually have the best chance of winning the championship. Kawhi really showed that he has some secret sauce against Giannis last year in those Eastern Conference Finals. I think that they both have something to prove against each other, but Kawhi is just, I think in that moment will be that much better, just that much better than Giannis. But man, the Paul George factor. See, this is it. I'm in the moment saying the Clippers, and I'm second guessing myself. But I would say I'm like 55% Clippers, 45% Bucks right now.
Look, I'm gonna be a homer, man. Lakers. It is what it is. It would not surprise me if any of the other teams went to the finals and won. But there's something in me that says like this season, like they need to win it this year. For a lot of reasons, but I feel like I really want to see what LeBron looks like in the finals. Some of these games in the regular season, in the bubble, he just kind of looked like he's going through the motions. You know, I want to see, is he going to go full steam ahead from game one against the Blazers on to whenever the Lakers finish in the playoffs? And I feel like if he's LeBron, I mean, no one's going to beat him with Anthony Davis. That's just how I see it. But again, I want to see what he looks like, how serious he takes all these games. If he has games where he's shooting, 5 for 17, or he's settling for the three. And that's one thing about LeBron I've noticed a lot this season. It's year 17. I don't expect him to blow by everybody. I saw this with Kobe as well. But Kobe obviously was more skilled from mid-range and had more of an offensive game than LeBron does. But LeBron settles a little too much for me for threes sometimes, and I want to see him get to the rim, bully guys. But to Brian's point, if the refs are calling these games too closely, then all of a sudden he's picking up offensive fouls, and so I want to see the Lakers win because I'm a fan, but also I think that would be amazing for the NBA, and then even just beyond the finals themselves. Let me ask you guys a couple questions about what we're seeing now with coaches being let go and going into next season. So first and foremost, Alvin Gentry was let go today. And Brian, I'm sure you saw this, that Ty Lue may be one of the coaches that they reach out to. Jason Kidd might be one of the coaches that they reach out to, but and Kenny Atkins as well. How hot is that job in New Orleans right now? Like, do you think coaches will be clamoring to get Zion and that team? What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. I think that New Orleans has a pretty bright future. There's going to be some tough decisions to be made this summer. They got to figure out what they want to do with Brandon Ingram, if they want to keep him and pay him what he's going to kind of demand out of, rightfully so. He had a great season. But yeah, I mean, considering how disappointing they were in these seeding games, like truly, truly disappointed in the Pelicans. Like the play-in tournament was set up for that team and they did not seize the opportunity. So, I mean, there's really nowhere to go from here but up with the way that they ended the season. I think that Alvin Gentry is a great coach. I think that he should have probably been given a little more of an opportunity with this new team. I mean, I don't know what Zion ended the season at in terms of total minutes played, but it wasn't much. So yeah, I mean, I think Lou is probably a shoo-in for that job, to be super honest. I was talking to some people earlier today. Kenny Atkinson feels like the perfect fit for Chicago with a young team. I think that he would work really well there. And who knows, Alvin might just go back to being an assistant coach somewhere. But yeah, Ty Lue, I feel like would be a really, really good fit for that team.
I think Alvin will probably be a hot commodity on the assistant coach market, assuming he decides to go that route. There were a number of Lakers fans in my mentions today saying that if Jason Kidd moves on or whatever, they just hope that Vogel can add Gentry, assuming him and AD have a good relationship. But Cody, what about Brooklyn, man? I mean, is it a hot job? And let me preface that by saying I know they got KD and I know they have Kyrie, but KD is like, 31, 32, coming off an Achilles. Kyrie misses at least 15 games a season. Is that job as good as everyone thinks that it is?
No, I actually think that's a terrible job. If I were a coach, I would avoid that at all costs. If I'm being completely honest. I mean, with KD's injury, I mean, there's significant evidence throughout NBA history that players that injure their Achilles in the way that he did just don't come back the same way at all. I mean, if it's even 85, 80%, 90%, whatever it is, I don't think we're going to see the same KD that we once did. And that breaks my heart. And I don't want him to be in my mentions tonight talking about how I'm a hater or something like that. But man, KD, I'm really pulling for you because I really love watching him play. He's so smooth. He's so fluid, but I don't know. And if we're also just going there, I think Kyrie and KD both have sort of clashing personalities. I want to see how they're going to exist off the court together. I really do appreciate a lot of the stuff that Kyrie has done this offseason, but he definitely has a bristly personality and KD has a bristly personality. And that might be a lot to try and handle at this time. And even on the court, I don't know how much that they're going to mesh too much. I mean, neither are fantastic defensively. KD definitely took a step forward with the Warriors, but those are two shoot first guys that don't create a ton for other players on the court. I don't know. I don't love the future of that team, to be honest with you.
I would take that job personally. I would take the job, make millions of dollars. I'd probably just eat a lot of peyote with Kyrie and just talk about different philosophical points of view and, play basketball every now and then.
Okay. Alex, do you think Brooklyn is if next season, what's the better job, Brooklyn or New Orleans?
Wait, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, next season, what's the better job, Brooklyn or New Orleans?
I think it's New Orleans by far. But pretty much everything Cody said was true. I wouldn't want to coach a team with two players of Irving and KD's level. First of all, they probably have big egos too. You just saw the way they threw out Kenny Atkinson right off the boat, after 50 games, not even. And they have to be really careful with who they pick here. I feel Ty Lue would probably be the best option because he sort of handled egos well with the Cavaliers. Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving. He already coached Kyrie Irving, so he already knows him, and LeBron James. So I think if your name's not Ty Lue, I'm not too sure who is good enough to take this job, really.
Any chance we see Mark Jackson back in the NBA next year, possibly coaching Brooklyn?
Please no. Please no. That's the worst team for him to take over. Mark Jackson. So what he did with the Warriors was perfect. He needs a young team that he can kind of set some foundational pieces into and get them he's really good at building a foundational base. And then somebody comes in and takes him over the hump. I don't think that's what Brooklyn needs. I think that's the exact opposite of what they need. Yeah, I mean, maybe Mark Jackson to Chicago, right? Another one of those just young teams where he could go teach them how to play defense. And then in a couple of years, somebody will come in, take him over and unlock the offense that they want to have.
So I had someone say this to me and I have no idea how true this is. This person covers the Rockets. But they told me that no matter what happens with the Rockets this year, Tim Fertitta is going to blow it up. And they said, just look at his financial situation. And I'm a banker. And I have been looking at it closely. And for fans that don't know, when it comes to NBA owners, Fertitta's like the brokest of them all. I mean, his financial situation is terrible, and he bought the Rockets with bonds and a loan from Leslie Alexander. NBA should never let that happen. But regardless, people are telling me he's going to blow up that team, and if he does, while people have their eyes on Bradley Beal possibly to Brooklyn, James Harden might end up in Brooklyn. I have no idea if the math works. I haven't even really went down that path yet, but Fertitta blowing the Rockets up, I can see happening. Now, whether or not Harden ends up a Rocket, do you guys think that's even possible?
Maybe. I mean, financially, it could work, but they would have nothing left over to fill out the rest of that roster. You would hope that guys are going to come back on minimum deals. Mm-hmm. I think my biggest question in terms of Harden going to Brooklyn is like, what's the titty bar situation in Brooklyn? Because if you've seen the map with where he plays and who has the best strip clubs around the country, and I think he needs to be close. Like Atlanta would be the perfect fit for him. I think he would go crazy in Atlanta.
Cody, if you're running the Brooklyn Nets, who would you prefer, Bradley Beal or James Harden?
Man, making me pick between two shoot first, no defense guards right now on a team that needs a lot of defense and a lot less shooting first. I honestly don't. I mean, if you're giving me that, I have to take James Harden. It's one of those things where talent just wins out in the NBA. And even if the pieces don't fit right away and you have a chance, I don't know how the math works. I'm not a cap expert by any means. I don't pretend to be. But if you have a chance to get KD, Kyrie, and James Harden together, you go for it, and then you figure it out later. Because who knows? Maybe those are the kinds of guys that like playing with other shoot first type of players like that, players that you can just take in a pickup game and are going to be spectacular. So you know what? Sure, let's go with Harden in that situation.
So the Timberwolves is up for sale. Glenn Taylor is putting them up for sale. Do you guys think that there might be a couple more teams over the next year or two that might hit the auctioning block, so to speak, given where the NBA is at financially with the coronavirus?
So I read an article not that long ago, and I can't remember who wrote it, and I wish I could credit them for it because it was a great article. But to what you're saying about making up some of the money being lost right now, instead of selling teams, they were talking about an expansion where you would add 2 more teams into the league because that would bring in more ticket sales, more merchandise sales, another TV or 2 more TV deals to bring in. Seattle's been clamoring to get a team, and I think it just makes the perfect sense. Like, I think it makes perfect sense to put another team in Seattle, put the Sonics back. They have a built-in audience, and they would bring in all of the Vancouver crowd from Canada in on that whole fan base. And then the other on the east side, what they were talking about was put a team in Kansas City. If you look at where Kansas City is on the map, you can draw a circle around it, and there isn't any basketball team too close to them, so they wouldn't be pulling from any other market. And I think they have an arena ready in Kansas City to host an NBA team, from what I read. And so they wouldn't even have to put up the money to build anything, that it's already there, maybe some renovations, but not nearly what it would cost to build a brand new arena from the ground up. And I think Kansas City, it just makes too much sense to put a team there. I think that whole area would love to have a professional basketball team. And if you do that, man, I mean, could you imagine the Sonics coming back? The boom that would create, that would be huge.
I mean, it would be a huge economic boom to the NBA. And I honestly, outside of ego, I don't know why the Clippers, look, I don't want them in LA, even though I don't live there, but I don't want them in LA. But I don't understand why they wouldn't have just went to Seattle, because I do think that there's so much money. Whoever takes a team to Seattle is just going to pour in. And so, but Kansas City, I never thought about that, man. I have to look at that. I'm always curious how they balance out expansion. But so to that point, do you feel like the league is already a bit watered down? Like, I feel like there might already be too many teams.
I don't know if they're necessarily watered down, but after watching the bubble, I just feel like every single game was so much more competitive than nights I'd be watching in the NBA. And I was like, it'd be great if we only had 22 teams. That's just so much more. And we didn't even take the talent from the other 8 teams and spread them out across there. Mm-hmm. But when you have every game focused on these top 22 of the games are just that much more competitive. So I don't know if it's necessarily watered down. I think that this is probably the most talented the league has ever been, and you could definitely spread out stars to more teams, but maybe just the game-to-game product would be better in a smaller league.
So to the point of what you're talking about, the bubble being amazing basketball, I also think it's worth pointing out that we had more Western Conference teams invited to the bubble. And when you eliminate kind of the bottom half of the Eastern Conference, it's going to be a more competitive product. I just want to address the Clippers to Seattle thing. As much money as that would bring in, it doesn't matter. Seattle's not Los Angeles. If LA and New York, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the Clippers or the Lakers or the Nets or the Knicks, those markets are so massive. And especially in Los Angeles, where there's so much more industry than just basketball. Seattle does have tech, but the entire film industry, entertainment industry is all in Los Angeles. You can be second fiddle. You can be the little brother in the city, and it's still going to be a massive market for you to capitalize on. And
when the owner can pay cash for the team and for a stadium, I mean, that always helps, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it only makes sense to keep him in LA. Ballmer would make, it doesn't matter what he would make in Seattle. He's already making more in Los Angeles.
Wow. So, you know what, guys, I think we'll wrap up on that. I can't say this more. Can't say this enough. I think Adam Silver and the NBA did a phenomenal job. Given the circumstances, I think they did as good as they can do. I'll ask you guys this as we close out. Looking to next season, Fauci was on TV, I think yesterday, early this morning. He's not confident about where the country's going to be at 6 months, a year from now. Are we looking at an extended bubble type situation? Maybe a bubble in each conference? What do you think next season looks like, and when do you think next season starts? And Brian, let me start with you. When do you think the season even starts and what it looks like?
Well, the latest rumors I've heard is January. They're looking at January as a possible start date. I was hoping to get the Christmas schedule in there, maybe even make Christmas opening night. If you want to talk about bringing in some major revenue, opening night being Christmas would be massive. But yeah, so Jason down here saying it, they're talking about having basically 3 different bubble situations. I think it's Vegas, Orlando, and I can't remember where the third one was talked about. Possibly Chicago, I think might have been the third one, but it's basically rotating bubbles of how you would run the league out. Now, schedule wise, I don't know how that works out. I think the entire league, whatever they do next year, is going to do everything they can to end it on schedule and hope that we're past all of this by the, because it would be 21-22 season, hope to get back onto a normal schedule and back into the same rhythm that they were on before all of this happened.
Alex, what do you think next season looks like for the NBA?
For sure there's going to be a season. I remember reading a report where Adam Silver said bubble may not be necessary, which I was really surprised about. And if there was a bubble, I wonder, like, how would the players even want that, to be in a bubble for like that long of a stretch? And how short would the season be too? Like, I'm guessing it would have to be 42 games, 41 games, then playoffs added. And like, even after that, like, is there like a week off where all the players go to their family and spend time with them? Like, I really don't know how this player wise, like, if you would even want to do that. And that's what like interests me the most, really, if there's going to be a season or not next year.
Cody, same question, man. What do you think we're looking at for next season?
I really don't even want to speculate. I think this is way too big of a thing for me to just be like, oh, this would be great. So I have the same question as Alex. Is this actually going to happen? But I actually hadn't heard about the 3 bubble idea that Brian was talking about. That seems like, I mean, we're going to have to start thinking outside the box. And I really hope, and I'm sure that the NBA has people that are trying to figure this out right now. And that was one of my big fears about continuing the season right now, is that it was going to take away resources from planning next season, which might be an even bigger and more difficult undertaking. So I don't know, but that's definitely a really interesting question.
Well, guys, I appreciate you all joining me for this past hour. Cody, tell everybody, man, how they can find you and the work that you do.
All right, so you can find me over at Twitter. I'm at Cody Hodek, CodyHoudek. I write for Overtime Heroics. I am in charge of their YouTube channel. I write for Premium Hoops now. That's pretty recent. I have a recent article about Kristaps Porzingis and why he might be considered the Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And
Wait, what?
Yep. I'm not going to spoil that.
Here goes the next hour of the podcast.
You can go ahead and read it. Share the article and then go read it. Then we can talk about it some other time. But I have a long video coming out on Monday imagining what would happen if each playoff team had a chance to pick a historical player to join their team. So keep your eye out for that.
Interesting. And you, Alex, let everybody know where they can find you.
So yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Alexandro Fidan1. Or you could find my work at Raptors Rapture. It's for Fansided. And I have a recent article. I know I was a lot of Siakam slander today. Sorry about that for my new Raptors fans. I wrote an article about like how disappointing he has been and what he could improve on and like why he's been the way he's been recently.
And Brian, you want to close this out?
Sure. So, first of all, I just want to say, Alex, I love you, buddy. And I'm talking to Raptors Alex here because I love the defeated mentality of Toronto fans. It connects with the Clippers side of me. I love that. I identify with that so much. For my Clippers coverage, you can follow me at the Real Sign Guy 1 for all of your Clippers news. I'm just kidding. I hope he's still watching just to see that. But on Twitter, I'm at Brian S. Cullen. I am co-host of a weekly Clippers show called the Clipset Podcast. I also co-host a show here on the Crossover Network called Ball is Left, and it's me and a buddy of mine who's one of the most brilliant people in my life that I've ever known, academic, professional musician, and we talk about the world of sports through our very leftist lens, navigating the inherently unethical world of sports and just the world around us. And we cover everything from the NFL to the NBA to politics, pop culture, all of that stuff.
What's the name of that show?
Ball is Left.
Man, you may have sold me just from that.
all three of these guys do good work. That's why I reach out to them to get them on the show. And I'm grateful that Brian, he came on, he joined the Crossover Network with me. And I can't speak for the Clipset pod, but Ball is Left is A1. So Lakers fans, definitely go check out the Ball is Left podcast. You guys know who I am. I host Lakers Central as well as the Crossover podcast. And I'm one of the hosts for Off the Record. So we'll close out on that note. And this is Lakers Central.